Hey everyone, welcome back to the Widowed Parent Podcast Live. I'm here today with my guest, Buffy Peters of Hamilton's Academy of Grief and Loss. Buffy, welcome.
Hi, Jenny. It's so good to see you again. How are you?
Good, good, and welcome back, by the way. You were on episode, I forgot to look what number it was, quite a long time ago, and we had such a great
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to listen to that as well. But today we're here to talk about Hamilton's and the resources that you guys have.
Yeah, so we're very excited to kind of talk to your audience and let them know a little bit more about, what we have to offer here at Hamilton's Academy of Grief and Loss, not only to local families here in Iowa, but also, across the nation.
Yeah, yes, definitely. So let's cover that in kind of in two parts then. So you mentioned Iowa. So where in Iowa are you?
So our office is in Des Moines, Iowa, and we're actually in West Des Moines, but we serve the Des Moines metro area, central Iowa, as well as across the state. Usually we'd be driving for maybe a school crisis response or things like that. So that's one thing that the pandemic has kind of helped us with is we're able to serve even more people here in Iowa, just being able to do some of those things virtually as well. But we have, local programs for kids who have had someone special die. We have our Little Hands, which is for 3.5 to 6 year olds, and we also have a Healing Hearts group, which is for first through sixth graders. And so those are kind of short-term programs. Ours are kind of unique since we are attached to Hamilton's funeral home. We do have a whole session really dedicated to what does it mean when we say someone has died. Some kids, that might be the first conversation they've had because us adults tend to use, those euphemisms and don't always use direct language. And so we make sure we talk about that. We do a tour of the funeral home. We talk about their person's funeral. So that's a really important part of our grief support that we provide, whether that's our kids programs or the school groups that we provide as well.
Yeah. Okay. So for families that are clients of a funeral home and will have a funeral coming up, I think you call it a first viewing or something,
Mhm.
where you provide support around helping those
Yeah.
kids with what's going to happen
Yeah,
and that
yep.
sort of thing.
I love working in the academy because we have the best of both worlds. We get to work a lot with kids, whether they're, families we serve through the funeral home or any family that's had somebody special die. We help them with lots of different things.
Mm.
Probably 90% of our services are open to anyone in the community where we have just a few things that are just for our families. And
Mm.
everything we provide is free of charge. So there is no charge to families that want to come to our kids programs. We also have some adult programming. We just had one this past Sunday, which was coping with grief during the holidays. So how
Mm.
do you prepare? We
Mm-hmm.
know the holidays are tough in general. Then, of course, you add a pandemic to it. And so this time of year is really tough for people. And so we're encouraging those conversations. How do we talk about what do we want to do? What do we not want to do? And really facilitating that conversation with families. So we do have adult programming as well, but a lot of the things we do here in the academy is geared towards kids. Our school grief groups that we typically would go into the school, right now we're actually doing a mix of virtual and in-person groups. Those are for kids kindergarten through high school. So we work a lot with middle school and high schools here in the Des Moines area, just, helping them after they've had someone die. Sometimes there's been a death in the school community. So maybe it's a faculty member or a student that has died, and we'll go in and either do crisis responses. We might do a crisis type group for that group of friends, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So we have a lot of resources for all the stuff, so just depending on who it is we're serving, because we do serve so many different people. We also actually serve as a linking agency. And so when people call in, they might say, hey, my person died and I don't know what to do. I don't know what resources are available. Where do I go? What do I do? So we'll put together a grief care packet for
Mm.
those people. And I know we're going to talk about our website and our handouts, but some of those really helpful handouts we would put in there. So maybe they have kids who's had someone, the person has died. And so we can talk about, how do you explain death to children? How do you explain cremation, suicide, all these kind of difficult topics to talk to them about, but also for themselves. So the adults have, what are the effects of grief, just to really validate and normalize that experience. And I'm going to show you my keep by the phone copy, but we would include this booklet. And
Ah,
this is on our website. This is our community resource booklet. And
okay.
this contains all of the grief support services, not only here in Des Moines, but across the state of Iowa. So if any
Ah,
of your listeners are in Marshalltown, Iowa City, somewhere else, they can actually look at this booklet and see, oh, here's where I can go for in-person grief support when they have
in
that.
another part of the
Um,
state.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
And
terrific.
in the very very back, we actually do have a lot of podcasts such as yours, TED Talks, websites, different resources like that too.
Ah,
And so that's really helpful. So even if you don't live here in Iowa, I would highly recommend you taking a look at that, just because it might give you some ideas of too who maybe you can reach out to that might provide that support.
mm-hmm.
We also have services for people who've had a pet die. We know that that was a need here in the community, and so we have a pet loss support group that we've actually been doing via Zoom, which is amazing because we have kind of our core group of people that have always been coming, but now we have people across the country that are coming as well.
Oh,
And so
nice.
that's really helped, broaden that reach. We do also have something called a death cafe. And so I don't know if your listeners are familiar with that kind of topic or model, but it's basically a movement to let's talk about death and dying.
Hmm.
That's the one fact we know we're all going to die. And so people that are just really interested in talking about like end of life care and different things like that. A lot of death cafes are actually online, so you could go to one and across the country, like you go to death cafe every night if you wanted to.
Huh.
So we do have one here in Iowa, and we meet the third Tuesday of the month. And so that's really exciting. We actually went international last month. We were very excited. We had
Hmm.
somebody from Canada join us,
Nice.
but we have people from all over that join us, which is really cool with that too.
Yeah.
Um, we also have, I'm kind of sitting a little awkwardly, but behind me, you will see our grief lending library.
Ah, yes.
And so that is, we have our bibliographies also on our website. And so if you're ever looking for a really good book, definitely reach out to us and let us know, because we have probably over 900 titles here in our library
Wow.
for kids, adults, teens. I mean, there's tons and tons of books. We have a huge wish list as well. So we're just trying to get all those in. The next purchase will probably be your book. We'll get that right in there
Ah,
for people as well.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so just trying to help people, again, knowing that there's so many different experiences. Even though grief and loss is a universal thing, we're all
Mm-hmm.
going to have somebody die that we know in our life, but the experience is all different. And so really just trying to meet people where they're at and get them the support that they need, is really important to us. And so that's why we kind of offer all the stuff I say.
Yeah.
Like if we don't do it, we can get you to the people who do. So that's
Yeah.
always good.
That's
Yeah.
terrific. Okay, you've said so many things. I'm not sure what to follow up on first. It's terrific. You guys have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Uh, so I just let's see. But I think I heard you say that the resource guide and the bibliography of suggested books are available as free downloads on your website for
Yes.
anybody
Yep.
who maybe isn't nearby or can't make it in or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
terrific. And then just as far as your groups, I know things are messed up right now with the pandemic, but presumably someday we'll get back to, quote unquote normal. So I think you said you have groups for small kids and medium sized
Mhm.
kids. You have teenagers and adults groups as well, or how
Yeah,
does
so
that work?
we don't provide specific teenagers and adult groups
Okay.
besides our pet loss support group,
Mm-hmm.
that is for adults, because there are so many great groups already in Des Moines.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
knowing, like most grief people, there's only a few of us working here, so we can't do it all, but
Sure.
that's where we can refer people to if they've
Okay.
had a child die, the compassionate friends, or the many many widow support groups that are available.
Mm-hmm.
Teenagers are tough, they're very very busy. So any teenage groups that have been here kind of in the Des Moines metro area hasn't really taken off because they're
Mm-hmm.
busy doing so many things. That's where the grief support in schools is really really important. And that's why they're so popular, because they're already in school. We
Mm.
come in, it's 45 minutes out of their day, and they're able to honor their person and get that support they need.
Mm-hmm.
So our middle school and high school are our most popular school groups, for
Gotcha.
that reason, because they're so busy. Like trying to get them outside of school is just nearly impossible.
Yeah. That makes a lot of
So
sense. Yeah. And
yeah.
so it sounds like if, you guys are a good starting point if you're in your area, if someone's in your
Yep.
area and they're not sure where to find the right resources or whatever, they can start with you and you
Yep.
can suggest all kinds of things that might be appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
great,
Yep.
good. Okay. And before I let you go, I want to ask you about your online resource library because this would be for someone, even if they're not in Iowa.
Yeah.
I send people to your online resource library all the time. So tell us about that.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Our online resources are amazing. So you have it right there. It's in PDF format. You can print it right from our website. It's got all our contact information. So if people do have more questions, maybe it's like, this was kind of alluded to in this handout, but I really want to deep dive in on this. They can reach out and, ask questions about that. It's a variety of topics. You all the way from, what are some things you can expect being a homicide survivor? What happened? How do I explain overdose to children? All these difficult topics that you're like, I don't even know where to start on that. There's
Yeah.
a handout usually for that. And
Right.
so there's ones for teens. We've got some teen booklets that are on our website as well. Just really, again, validating that experience, validating that grief, and also what are some things that you can do to help yourself cope with that grief. So there's handouts for if you've had a baby die and how do you address some of those hurtful comments that people say to you, all kinds of different things. So we have a ton of handouts. If they're not one on there, we probably have one, formulating right now, but
Uh,
please reach out if there's one you're looking for. They're also in some different languages. We do not have them all translated, but when we know somebody wants one translated, if we have the ability to do that, we can certainly try. So
hmm.
there are some in Spanish. There are some in Hmong. There was a group that really wanted these certain handouts translated, so they translated for us,
Hmm.
and so we just formatted that. So that's really good too.
Nice.
Yeah, and so like I said, that community resource booklet is on there, so you can print out just the pages that you want. So if you want to just know, hey, what are some different podcasts or what some TED Talks, we have descriptions and I've watched them all. So they're all, Buffy
Hmm.
approved and there's
Uh,
no like 5 stages of grief or anything that's not really that helpful.
right.
But just again, trying to kind of meet people where
Yeah.
they're at and get them those resources.
Yeah.
We also do have a new COVID page on there. So keep that in mind too, that if you're looking for COVID specific resources, we have made a couple of different handouts. One is, okay, how do you grieve during a global pandemic?
Hmm.
And so that's kind of a two-part one. And then we also have, okay, so now that funerals have been really impacted during this, how do we still incorporate children? Because as you know, and any of your listeners that listen to our episodes know how passionate we are about including kids in those end of life rituals. And so
Mm-hmm.
how do we do that in a time where things are so kind of limited and restricted, so that they can still be really, involved in those things because that's really important too.
Yeah. Good. Good. Well, I'll make sure to put a link to the resource library in the notes here
Absolutely.
because, like I said, I send people to it all the time, and there's so many different topics. You wouldn't maybe realize that there's this many topics
Mhm.
until you start looking over the list, and whether it's grief broken down all by different ages, small,
Mhm.
babies, small kids, teenagers, um, types of loss, like you said. The one about like how does cremation work? That's a hard one to read, but it's an
Mhm.
important one. And if you've got a kid asking, well, what does cremation mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good resource to have.
Yeah, and that's one of the conversations that we're usually called in for with that first viewing support that you were talking about.
Mm,
Not just letting the kids know, like, this is what we do at the funeral home, but okay, let's talk about your specific person.
mm,
And you're going to go in and see them. So we'll talk about in as much detail as the kids want. Some kids, like, they don't want to know about embalming. Other kids are like, tell me all about it, just
mm-hmm.
depending on their age range. And
Right,
that's not an easy conversation, for an adult to have if you don't truly know what that is. And
right.
that's the thing that we've really seen is that, especially with cremation, most adults don't know what that means.
Right.
Like we
Yeah.
have our preconceived notions. And so it's really nice that we can, explain that as little as 4 years old, we can explain what it means when somebody is cremated.
Mm,
And so that's really important. And I know that there's a lot of professionals in the field that actually utilize that handout because they're like, I don't work for a funeral home. I don't know. Like
yeah.
here,
Yeah.
here it is. So
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Good. Well, I'm glad you guys have put all that together. And before I let you go, tell us where to find Hamilton's and your online resources.
Yeah, so the easiest place is our website, which is hamiltonsfuneralhome.com. It's Hamiltons with an S, and we have all kinds of different links and resources on there as well. And then, of course, we have, Facebook and Instagram, and so you can always, follow us over there to see, what we're doing with our kids groups when we're having them. We post lots of pictures of, we have a family support dog program here at Hamilton's, and so we've got a couple dogs that work at our funeral home, including my dog Bear, who's in
Who
training to
hasn't
be.
barked yet?
He hasn't barked yet. I think he's. Oh, he's laying behind me again.
Ah.
Has not barked or tore apart a bowl, so we're doing good. And so that's kind of fun too. And just to give people a little bit of time and space to validate those feelings that they're feeling, knowing that support is not just I'm going to go to a grief support group, that there's lots of different ways that they can get that support, whether that's if they need a one-on-one counselor that we can refer them to, if they'd like to check out a book from the library, if they just need ideas of, journals and different things like that. So we just try to meet people where they're at, and give them those resources. And so, yeah, the first place I would recommend is going to our website, and never hesitating to reach out, especially at a time right now. People are really struggling. And so
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there is nothing wrong with you, this is the natural and normal reaction to loss. And we're in a lot of loss right now with the pandemic. And so don't feel ashamed or embarrassed or anything like that if you need that extra support. There's people here to support you, and we can get you there.
Mm-hmm. Great. And again, if you're in Iowa looking for the local resources, or if you're anywhere and looking for your online resources, it's hamiltonsfuneralhome.com.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Great. All right, Buffy. Well, thank you for speaking with me today.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Jenny.